Live in the Heartland with Katie Hogan, Michael James, and Tom Clark as we get a microphone going. Welcome on this sunny day with spring beginning to creep around the corner before we get another blast of cold. Actually, the buds and the trees don't quite like this up and down with, is it spring, is it winter? But we'll see how that all works out. Today we're going to talk a little bit about food and the environment with Jennifer Murtoff, who is going to talk about the Urban Livestock Expo next week. We hope to be seeing Jacob Meister, who's a candidate for the Kirkus Circuit Court, and we have a music reporter with both Vice and Rolling Stone by the name of Josh Terry, who's going to talk a little bit about the Chicago music scene. So welcome, Michael and Katie.
Good morning, Tom.
Tom. It's good to see you here.
So this week we found out that for sure that the Russians are still voting with us, and that they're voting basically on the side of Mr. Trump and Mr. Sanders.
Yes, Bernie said that he was also briefed about a month ago and had a very different reaction than the president did to this news.
Well, he had a grown-up reaction.
Really?
Yeah. And, once again, it's funny when we go through our banter week after week, I was having a hard time last night remembering if we had already reported the most outrageous thing that the occupant had done.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, this week, let's see. This week it was again interrupting people's jobs. I mean, they're leaving the White House in droves. The people with brains. I'm really concerned about who's left there.
Well, and Barr may have been considered one of the last adults, and I'm not sure if he's really in anymore. This is Attorney General Barr, who is meeting with GOP leaders behind closed doors next week. Now, supposedly, this has been set up for months. He wants to brief them on the upcoming renewal of various intelligence.
So he's only talking to Repubs?
He's only talking to Republican leaders.
Oh, swell.
Yeah, isn't that?
The other
Meanwhile, we're letting off white-collar criminals.
Yes, we are. That was... Go ahead.
We had not the pardoning, but the commutation of the sentence of the former governor of Illinois, who was caught being a felon, although, as we discussed earlier, he got a long sentence for talking too much, a problem that we had to suffer through. He was governor twice. We elected him twice, and now he's claiming he really didn't do anything wrong. So he sort of fits the whole Trump campaign.
We're bored with you, Blago. Shut up.
We sure are. So a couple of us at least watched the debate in some detail. Katie, what did you think about how the candidates did this time around?
Well, this was actually the closest thing to a debate we've seen. There was actual policy talked about and argued about. I thought it was good and lively. I thought Bloomberg looked like a deer in the headlights three times when he was asked direct questions about policy or challenged. I hope he continues in that vein and steps down at the right time and gives his money to the Democratic side of the aisle.
I hope Steyer gives his money too.
Yeah.
Steyer.
Well, I thought Elizabeth Warren did a great job. She had to claw for her time and get a little rude to get attention, and evidently that's what it takes to play with the boys.
She raised a lot of money right after that.
Good for her. She should. I also thought it was the best outing that Biden had. He did not look as much like a deer in the headlights as he has. He also didn't look as pasty and strange.
I had him as treading water, but he probably did better than that.
Yeah.
And Bloomberg really was. He not only came across as unprepared, but that arrogant side of the successful billionaire seeped through despite himself.
True that. I liked a number of the comments that both Amy and Warren made about, what? Another billionaire? We want to elect another flippin' billionaire? No, I don't think so. And, of course, Bernie is in the lead. Bernie is in the lead nationwide. Now, hopefully the DNC will not screw it up like they did 4 years ago. I don't know who will be in the lead by the time we get to July. I'm not predicting, and what I found out about myself last week when we did our own endorsement session,
Yeah.
I don't care. I am going to work my tail off for whoever gets it.
I'm in the same place, Katie.
Yeah, I am too, but on the other hand, my thoughts are for the Democrats, if Bernie is the nominee, which I think he probably will be, the line should be embrace Bernie and really go for it. They always talk about how he can't beat Trump. How many people have we had from Trump, Obama, various other people who said they couldn't win, and they went on to win. So I throw that out, embrace Bernie.
I just want to caution us that the national polls, as intriguing as they might be with every Democratic candidate beating Trump at this point, the national polls are somewhat meaningless. It's those state-by-state races that are important, and really that ground game is going to be so important when we go forward. There's some talk about how the Illinois primary may figure in higher, more influentially before Super Tuesday because of the way this...
Super Tuesday is before the Illinois primary, March 3rd.
I'm sorry.
But I think Illinois will be more important than its date would indicate, simply because Super Tuesday is Super Tuesday.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later or so, a number of other states' races happen. And I think Illinois coming out strong for whoever we come out strong for will have a bit of a significance, that because it is not on Super Tuesday, in my opinion. Let's see.
What's going on in Germany?
Well, Tom tells us 60,000 people are marching in Hamburg against climate change, the climate crisis, and he's also reported that the African high school students are on strike for the same. South African, sorry, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little agricultural report. While 7 in 10 U.S. shoppers buy organic poultry, the organic bird consumers are most likely to find in their grocery stores come from industrialized companies. This raises unsettling animal welfare and environmental concerns, according to a new report from the Cornucopia Institute. It's called For the Birds, How to Recognize Authentic Organic Chicken and Turkey, which uncovers critical issues in certified organic chicken and turkey production. And if you go to cornucopia.org, you can get this report and a whole lot more information. They do good work.
I'm very curious about that. It would be very good to check that out, and it's because, I often feel when I'm looking at the meat and it says organic, or anything that says organic, particularly under this FDA and this administration.
Yeah, the standards have been lowered.
Who's checking?
Well,
Yeah,
the word organic is really a marketing term. It really doesn't bear particular significance over the quality of meat. I happen to buy an Amish brand hen that is available at our local market. It didn't rank that high on this rating sheet that the Cornucopia Institute put out. But I think it has to do with how they rate industrialized, as they define it, versus family farm. And we are talking about hens that would probably cost about 4 times what a regular chicken costs in the store right now. So it's a very interesting issue because of the kind of chickens we get and what they've been through to get to us.
Maybe we could talk more about this with Jennifer when we have
Yeah,
her
we'll see if they're Rhode Island Reds or Leghorns. We'll get the chicken details.
Across the street from where we broadcast this show every week, Politico is hosting The Food System in the Future on March 3rd at 8 a.m. at the Wintrust Hall here at Loyola 16 East Pearson.
Another thing you should be aware of, those of you who are wanting to step up your activism on behalf of the local schools, CPS is currently seeking candidates for the local school councils, LSCs. If you would like to apply, go to https://cps.edu/LSC-relations. The deadline to apply to be on the LSC is March 5th at 3 p.m., and elections take place April 22nd. Speaking of schools, the missing person in the room today is our co-producer, Lynn Orman, who is attending the Golden Apple Awards event for Chicago teachers, of which her daughter is one. Congratulations, Stephanie. And I also want to congratulate Mary Quinlan Kovats, who is also a Golden Apple teacher. We love you. We need you. God
We
bless
love our
your
teachers.
God bless your commitment.
Mayor Lightfoot summoned leaders to a policy summit on ending poverty. She really is making a big deal about this. We'll see what policy recommendations develop as a result. Also this week, another chapter in the ongoing how much is Madigan controlled by ComEd or vice versa. I'm talking about the Speaker of the Illinois House. There are more disclosure this week about emails between top Madigan staffers and top officials of ComEd. Their hiring and lobbying activities are under federal investigation. We also had the amazing tale on the cover of the Reader this week about a veteran Chicago cop's private company that's been hired to train police in El Salvador. Problem? Well, he's one of the more frequently complained about cops in the system. Check out the story. It's very detailed. It shows how our domestic policy influences Central America and all those other things you read about in the headlines about the border crisis.
I so appreciate the Reader for making putting this story front and center on their front page. This is a little microcosm of what has gone wrong in foreign policy and city policing for the last 20, 30, 40 years even, since we were training terrorizing police in Central America. And I'm not surprised that one of our own worst examples of brutality and over-policing is involved in that, and I hope he gets his. Sorry.
On the mail front, the Postal Service Town Hall will be held at 6 p.m. at the Horwich Center, 3003 Toohey, and the date of that is February 24th. And apparently there has been some problems with mail delivery in the Northeast Corridor, so to speak. And we have Jan Schakowsky, Deborah Silverstein, Maria Haddon, and Harry Osterman are all going to show up to meet with people and the Postal Service to talk about it. We love the U.S. Postal Service. We don't want it privatized. We want to make it more efficient where it needs to be.
Yep.
Also opening up on the 24th is a new photographic exhibit at the Oak Park Library exploring race, class, and space in Austin, the adjoining neighborhood. It's a documentary of one of Chicago's largest neighborhoods as it was going through significant change in the 60s and 70s. It features the work of Shasha Byers-Burgess.
So we announced this before, but now it's coming up, February 25th. That would make it Tuesday. How to Be an Anti-Racist, put together by the League of Women Voters, 332 South Michigan Avenue, 6 p.m. I'm sure it'll be a quality event. Also, we have, for the first time ever, let's see, February 29th, the 49th Ward Virtual Town Hall on YouTube. That should be exciting. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but February 29th, that's next Saturday, 1 p.m.
And March 1st, there's going to Beat the Drum, a glimpse into Native American powwow culture, 1 p.m. Ryerson Woods. And we are very sorry to report that Rogers Park-based jazzman, now living in Florida until his death the other day, Bob Dogan. He's a longtime jazz pianist, played all over town, played at the No Exit Cafe. We had him at the Heartland Cafe. He was a wonderful guy. He ate regularly at the Heartland. We're going to miss you, Bob.
We also want to acknowledge the passing of a real pioneer, news anchor Bob Petty. Over 30 years, he worked at ABC and Channel 7. Very solid journalist and news anchor who also did a lot of public service programming. It's going to be sorry to see him go. You're listening to Live in the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM. Please like us on Facebook. And now a little bit of Chicken and Hawk.
Well, a curly-head chicken fell in love with a chicken hawk. Well, a curly-head chicken fell in love with a chicken hawk. He fell head over heels for that hawk's sweet talk. He said, take me up, Hawky, take me up in the sky. He said, take me up, Hawky, take me up in the sky. I'm just a little bitty chicken and I don't know know how to fly. He said, up, up and away. We gonna fly all day. Up, up and away. We gonna fly all day. Up, 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 up and away.
Oh, that's a nice way to start off our next segment. I want to welcome to the microphone Jennifer Murtoff, who is going to talk about the 8th Annual Urban Livestock Expo, which is taking place next weekend, Saturday the 29th, from 10 to 1 at Prosser Career Academy. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But what is the Livestock Expo? And, you know,
Welcome back, Jennifer.
How many people do this
Well,
now that
thanks.
you've been doing it for 8 years?
Sure. Thanks, Katie and Tom and Michael. So the Livestock Expo is a really great opportunity for people who are interested in urban agriculture to learn a little bit about some of the critters they're thinking about keeping. We have workshops on bees, goats, chickens, ducks, and quail.
Critters, I like that.
Critters, yes, yes. And the workshops are intended to give people just a brief taste of what they're getting in for. So it's not an in-depth 2-hour class, it's a 30-minute segment. And we have a couple different tracks, one for each critter, and then within those tracks we have different workshops. We also have a Spanish track, and this year we will have interpreters available as well. So la información está disponible en español y en inglés.
Muy bien.
So some of the new topics we have 3 veterinarians who are coming to speak to us briefly. Dr. Peter Sakis from Niles Animal Hospital will be speaking on avian anatomy. Dr. Ann Staudenmeyer from Ness Exotics in Lisle will be speaking on the signs of illness in backyard birds. And Dr. Aaron Vigil will be speaking on urban goat parasites.
Wow.
Wow.
Urban goat parasites?
Who knew, right?
How many
So-
Chicagoans are concerned about urban goat parasites?
Oh,
Well,
jeez. Come on.
Not
Come on,
enough,
Let her
apparently.
off the hook on that one.
There
She'll
aren't-
tell you after the event.
Yeah, I can fill you in on that.
This is taking place at Prosser Career Academy, which is on the west side, 2148 North Long Avenue.
That's correct. Yep.
Have you ever held it there before?
No, this is the first year for Prosser. It's been at the Southside Occupational Academy
Right.
for the last couple of years, but this is our first year
This
for
makes
Prosser.
it a little more attainable by more of the city.
Yes, and the Belmont
Residents.
Cragen neighborhood is there's a large Hispanic population that lives there, so that's why I did the little bit in Spanish.
Que buena onda, mamacita.
Viva!
Ándale.
Ándale. Adelante.
Viva
All
la
right.
gente.
All right, let's stop being real gringos here. And let me just launch into is sustainable food just for those who can afford it?
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why we have the Livestock Academy.
Yeah.
Or the Livestock Expo, because we want people to do this in their backyards. We want people to practice sustainable agricultural practices. We don't want them to necessarily go to the grocery store and purchase an organic chicken that's actually the product of the agribusiness industry.
There were in the air quotes there around the
They were
organic.
loud.
Yeah,
air
they
quotes.
weren't that loud, but
If you go to youtube.com/Heartland Media in a few days and watch us, each show is on YouTube, you'll be able to see the quote marks.
the air quotes.
The air quotes.
Sorry.
And the label organic, it only speaks to the diet of the animal. It doesn't speak to the way the animal's been treated throughout its lifetime. It does not speak to the treatment it's received, how it's caged. It doesn't speak to whether or not it's been raised on pasture.
Wow.
So all it speaks to is what the animal eats.
That is such a great piece of information. Really. And I do look for, chickens that move. What's the word I'm blanking on?
Pastured chicken?
Scratching. Free range.
Free
That's
range,
it.
yes, free range.
Which now more chickens are than used to be. But are we going backwards? That's our worry with the FDA and CDC and all these other very important regulatory outfits under the auspices of the current occupant.
Right. Right.
So there is, you're saying, you're nodding your head, there is fear that the organic stuff is losing ground?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I prefer to purchase from the small local agriculture producers, a small local farmer, through a CSA share, rather than going to the grocery store and purchasing something on a label. I actually did a study on egg carton labels. It's on my blog. It's called Egg Carton Labels, What's in a Name? And I looked at all the different labels we see on our egg cartons and what those mean for the diet the bird gets, whether or not it's free range, whether or not it has access to do natural activities, if it has access to actual pasture, or if it's just kept in a large barn. And it's amazing the spectrum of different labels that are out there, again with the air quotes.
Yes.
Some of them have no tooth, some of them have no meaning, and some of them are not necessarily enforced by the FDA for what it's worth.
Do we pay a price for 99 cents per dozen eggs?
We don't necessarily pay a price, but the birds pay a price. They are kept 6 to 8 in a very small cage. They don't have ability to do natural activities like scratching and dust bathing and whatnot. They're jammed in these cages.
Their feet don't even touch the ground sometimes.
They will probably be on just a wire floor.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of the birds will die in the cage, and the quote-unquote farmer won't realize that it's dead until it's been dead for a good long time. The birds are kept in low-light conditions to prevent them from pecking one another to death. Often they're debeaked. They run a hot wire across the end of their beak to remove the end of the beak to prevent pecking because they're under a lot of stress. This is where the cases of salmonella in eggs come from these big factory farms. So I would rather pay, this is nuts, $5 for a dozen of eggs than pay 99 cents for eggs from birds that are not humanely treated. And I actually keep quail in my own home, and they provide me with their own eggs, which is fabulous. They're good little layers, and I know exactly how they've been treated. I know exactly where those eggs have come from.
Oh, I'm going to stop buying the cheap eggs, and I'm going to actually get some chickens for the backyard.
Fabulous.
not.
You know a
Speaking
chicken
of-
consultant.
You are not.
Speaking of which, we're encouraging people to raise animals in the city, and there's been some blowback and pushback around that. I wonder if you could share the latest on that.
Sure. Apparently, earlier this week, I was given access to an article. Alderman Lopez reported that there was a horse found dead in the Englewood shelter. He claimed that there was no shelter for the animal and that was covered in feces. There was another horse on the property. Of course, the owner disputes this, and there's also a statement from the city supporting the owner. So Alderman Lopez...
good.
Alderman Lopez is again pushing back on urban agriculture and trying to pass this ordinance that would severely limit the ability to keep animals in the city.
Do we know why he's pushing back so hard? I mean, what is his motivation on that?
I'm not quite sure. He claims animal welfare issues. However, I would say that cases like the horse found dead or the fighting cocks that were found in the garage last year are by far exceptions to the norm. And I'm going to bring us back to the Livestock Expo. Part of what we intend to do as an urban agricultural community in the city is to educate people on what the animals need, how to take care of them. We've got the veterinarians coming in. If there's need for veterinary care, they now have access to that. So we're intending to disseminate information to help people do this in a way that is responsible so that we keep our rights as citizens of the city of Chicago to have animals in our backyard that can provide us with food.
Do you know how many households in the city might be actually raising their own food beyond growing it?
Wow, that's a good question. We now have 923 signatures on a joint statement opposing the livestock ordinance. As far as hard numbers are concerned, we've attempted to estimate, say, how many people have chickens and how many people might have ducks or quail. It's a challenge. There's a lot. And I think there's a lot more out there than are immediately apparent.
Jen, will you tell us, oh God, I just lost it.
Okay, Tom's ready with a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What is it that one can legally do in the city right now?
So the Chicago livestock ordinance allows for people to keep animals in their backyard as long as they're not slaughtering them. So if you've got a flock of broiler chickens, you can't go killing them in your backyard. what we encourage the urban agricultural people do who are not slaughtering we encourage them to take them to, say, a halal or kosher slaughtering facility, and have those organizations which are licensed to perform this.
On
them
Western,
take
just
the-
north of Devon.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Elston Avenue.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So what will newcomers find at the expo, which, by the way, folks, is next Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Prosser Career Academy? We're talking about the Urban Agriculture Advocates Livestock Expo.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So we've got a Spanish track that includes workshops all in Spanish. There's chicken keeping, beekeeping, urban goats, and then I will be doing a presentation on quail. There will be a tour of Prosser Academy's Urban Farm and Community Garden. There'll be 3 tours of that. There will be a vendor hall with information on different resources in the city for purchasing supplies. And then we'll have the tracks on chickens, bees, goats, quail, and ducks.
This is great.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for people to learn, get into it, meet like-minded others, and find resources to help out their endeavor in urban livestock.
And I can't think of a better way to remind us that spring is around the corner than to go to this expo and learn how to really improve your diet locally.
And there will be baby chicks there.
How
Oh,
about
gosh.
that?
Jennifer Murtough, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming in today and telling us about the 8th Annual Urban Livestock Expo happening next Saturday, the 29th, Leap Day Saturday at 1 p.m., 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., Prosser Career Academy.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM. Please check out our archive shows on youtube.com/Heartland Media. And now, Children of the Sun by Misunderstood.
Let go of the children. Close your eyes and drift away. When you wake again tomorrow, you've been born again to stay. That's the way the love is spoken. You join the children of the sun. You join the children of the sun.
Misunderstood. Next, we're going to bring up a candidate for the county clerk of the circuit court. Sorry, Jacob Meister is one of several challengers to replace Dorothy Brown, and I think we're all looking for who that next personality will be, since we've been waiting for this office to get cleaned up for some time. How long will it take?
Thanks for being here, Jacob.
How long will it take to recover from Dorothy Brown's style of administration, raffle tickets, and all those other kinds of things?
Well, for those of us who have been practicing in the courts, we've been waiting for 20 years to have this change. The courts are in a very bad shape. For those who don't know, the clerk of the circuit court is the chief record keeper, basically the chief operating officer for the second largest court system in the country. Cook County has about 400 judges. We operate out of 12 different court locations. And we operate in the 1970s. As a lawyer, and our judges as well, have to hand write out orders in triplicate using carbon paper, and that's the state of
I mean, that
record-keeping.
can't still be true.
It's true. It's true. Every day.
Literally,
every day.
I mean, where do they even get carbon paper anymore?
Well, that's good. I actually went on a little shopping spree just to see whether you can find carbon paper in places you
normally
think
would.
might have it don't, and I was able to find a few little packets of it, but it's true. I mean, carbon paper, is right up there with floppy disks and typewriter ribbons and all those antiquated office products that are very difficult to find. We manage to have it in the Circuit Court of Cook County every single day. Tens of millions of orders are kept manually in handwritten form. So I'm the only candidate in the entire race who has practiced for my career in the circuit court, and it's a very complex court system that's going to need some good direction to bring it into the 21st century. We need to have very robust case management system.
Okay, there's probably two ways to ask this question as well as to answer it. The role that the clerk plays in our justice system, you just called it a COO role for the circuit court system. First of all,
That's a simple way of
I understand, yeah. But now talk to us like we're 5 years old. What should the role be?
So we have we have 400 courtrooms. We provide the clerk's personnel for those courtrooms who manage all the files, all the cases being called, the entire docket that's being called for the judges. We do all the intakes, so when you go into the clerk's office, they're the ones who help you file documents, pay fines, fees, forfeitures. They maintain the IT systems so that...
So there is some IT.
There is IT. The current clerks, the technology is from the 1980s. It's still a DOS-based system.
Oh, swell.
Operates on a mainframe, and it becomes a very rudimentary just index system. But you can't, when you web browse in, all you can get is a little bit of an abstract of what's happened in the case. You can't download documents. So I've practiced in other courts all across the country, and there's some fantastic systems out there that really we need to implement in Cook County so that lawyers, judges, state's attorney, public defenders, the Illinois Department of Corrections, the sheriff, everybody who relies on the information that the clerk's office keeps on court files has web access, can download documents, download files, and it's just the way private industry operates for a long time.
Jacob Meister, would you call yourself an independent politically?
I am definitely an independent, independent reform progressive.
And I know you did receive the endorsement from our little organization up in our neck of the woods, Network 49, 2 weeks ago. What do you say to folks to distinguish yourself from the field?
Well, I am the independent. This is an office that has almost 1,500 jobs that the party machine covets and holds very near and dear to them. And it's an office that has been bogged down with patronage for its entire existence. Richard J. Daley's driver was running the patronage operation out of the circuit court. No experience whatsoever in operation.
Just a bunch of friends.
Just a bunch of friends, and that is historically where the machine puts all their precinct captains and other workers and coveted, their friends and family.
This is a
get
real
job there.
opportunity to clean up.
That's what's got to happen
Ooh.
because it interferes with justice. Let's face it, when somebody goes into the court system, they're facing a low point in their life. They're facing a
Right.
foreclosure or a eviction or child
Because this
custody.
is not criminal court.
The criminal, it's criminal too.
It is criminal.
all
It's all of them.
400 courts across Cook County. So
Okay.
it's a criminal court, it's a civil court, it's a probate court. So when a family member dies, this is where you go. Every court operation and function in Cook County has the clerk's office at kind of the epicenter of the flow of information. And so it's essential that we clean the office up. We've had a situation where the political forces bring their, family members, political workers in to get those jobs, and there's a lot of good workers in the office too who have real morale problems. So we need to clean that up and make sure that the courts are functioning properly.
Jacob Meister, candidate for clerk of the circuit court. How does the race look? You got any poll numbers? What's your feeling? What's the sense of what the populace is thinking?
Well, so this is a race that, it's right up there with the state's attorney's race, but the state's attorney's race is awash in cash. It's got about, there's probably going to be $10 million spent on the state's attorney's race. So I called this office the stepchild to the state's attorney's race. It is a wide open field. There's 4 of us running. I'm the only one who's run countywide. I ran 4 years ago for this office against Dorothy Brown. Did quite well, won 11 wards, 7 townships. I'm out there. I've got the best name ID of any of the candidates. The other
Do you
ones,
have yard signs, though? That's what I want to
our yard signs are coming. We do that. We
We
do
want
that.
'em,
We
we
do
want
that
'em.
closer to when early voting starts.
Right.
The yard signs.
I know. They're
they'll
costly.
be there. They're costly, and they get pulled up, and
Right.
we'll be there. When the polls
when
open.
it counts, right?
So it's a great race. I'm out there all over the county visiting voters, all the way from Lansing to Palatine and every place in between.
What's your sense of the power of the old machine?
What we've seen in recent elections, Tony Preckwinkle was only able to win about 20 precincts out of 2,150, and she's the Cook County Democratic Party chair. Fritz Kagi beat the prior Cook County Democratic chair, Joe Barrios, and the voters have pretty loudly signaled that they are done and over with party control of our government.
Right.
And that's a good thing. And I've got 3 opponents, all of whom are entrenched party people. We got a state senator who has been on the Illinois State Central Committee of the Democratic Party for 20 years. We've got another one who's currently the vice chair of the Democratic Party of Illinois, who took Joe Barrios' place on the Board of Review and has all sorts of ethical issues, has been collecting, he's on the Board of Review, so he hears tax appeals. Huge sums of his money come from the very people, the attorneys who have appeals before him, and he's been cited for over 100 violations of
This
the
is
ethics
the
ordinance.
slated candidate
This
you're
is the
speaking of?
slated candidate, the one
Okay.
who the Sun-Times said that they suspect that the party bosses, I think this is almost a quote, the party bosses want him in office in order to protect their 1,400 jobs, and that is what's broken with the court. And the third candidate, was going to run for state's attorney, and then he backed out of that race, and now he's running for clerk of the circuit court. And the reality is he's waiting for Danny Davis to retire so that he can take that job.
Jacob, I'm glad there's someone like you who's running for this particular administrative position, but in other jurisdictions, is this an appointed rather than an elected position? It
Yeah.
seems like it's a critical administrative role that politics shouldn't be involved with.
I agree. Got to
Bingo.
get politics out of the office. I have advocated for it being appointed by the circuit judges. We've got 300 elected circuit judges who appoint associate judges, who appoint their chief judge. They vote in secret ballots, and that's how they do it. Yes, most courts across this country have a circuit clerk that is appointed. It is a ministerial role. Politics should not get involved with it. But in Illinois, we elect the circuit judges because it gives the party a huge amount of control over those jobs and the patronage den that it's become, and they like it that way. Michael Madigan has thrown a bunch of money into this race in order to hold on to those jobs. Even in Illinois, the appellate court appoints its clerk. The Illinois Supreme Court appoints its clerk, yet we put the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County before the voters who really don't know what this office does.
So do you use the line as you stump for office, I'm not looking for a gold watch in 20 years from here?
I am not looking for a gold watch. I am not looking to make money off the employees by selling them the ability
The
to wear
raffle
jeans.
tickets?
No raffle tickets, no jeans on Friday. They can wear jeans on Friday, but they won't have to pay for it.
Yeah, right. Jeez, amazing. Hey, Jacob Meister, I'm so glad you made it here this morning. Thank you so much. This is a really important race that a lot of people don't know the details of, and you just helped.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out for this race when it comes. I'm number 145, Jacob Meister.
And we'll look for those lawn signs.
And we'll look for the yard signs and check me out on the web at jacob4clerk.com.
Thank you again, Jacob Meister. Glad to have you again up in here.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on 88.7 WV. I almost said
WLUW 88.7.
WLUW, Chicago. We're going to listen to some music as we bring in our final guest, Josh Terry.
Back in the old days, Shadows of the Night.
Shadows of Night, dude.
Shadows of Night.
And that was Shout.
Shout.
Shake.
Shake. What shake?
It was, you're right. it was
Okay,
Shake.
well, now I am really glad to introduce our next guest, one Josh Terry, a music writer for Vice, Rolling Stone. And good morning to you, brother.
Hey, good morning. Thank you all for having me.
It's
really
good to get
be
you here. You know, you stood out on a number of occasions. I was out seeing my kids' band, Twin Peaks, and there you were, big tall fella, and we got to talk a little bit. And I said way back, I'd love to have you come on Live from the Heartland, talk about the Chicago music scene, and we got you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I've always been a fan of this program, and it's good to finally be on.
Well, let's start off with your story yesterday in Vice magazine, which basically is Dwayne Wade out of Chicago, great basketball player, good human being. The story is about him wanting to be a rapper.
Well, yeah. So Dwayne Wade is obviously now retired. He's out of the NBA. Lately he's just been being a good father and being like a good...
On TV with an ad all the time for Gatorade.
Yeah, he is on TV a lot. He was just in Chicago for the All-Star game. And recently, there's going to be a documentary on him on ESPN on Sunday. And I think as a sort of a way to promote it, he's now deciding to become a rapper. He released a song called Season Ticket Holder with Rick Ross, who's a Miami rapper. The story was just sort of like a news item at Vice. I do news blogging for Vice during the weekdays. And it was about, he released a song. And it proved that he might be a better basketball player than a rapper. But it was good to see him having fun and trying out music for once.
Yeah. I know you had some article in Rolling Stone because Michael, that was one of the ways he initially talked to us about
your
you.
visit.
But you do most of your regular writing for Vice.
Yeah, at this point, I'm at Vice.com.
And is Vice the same as the Vice TV that I see?
Yeah, it is. So the Vice is a big media corporation.
It is.
So we have an editorial. I'm on the culture team, which is online. You're not going to see me on Vice, the cable television show, unless they have me on. But so like I do a lot of things for the publication. I blog about music, TV, and movie news. I also interview bands. I have a column there.
So you're a culture maven.
Yeah, I mean, I started out writing about music, but as I've been writing about music almost full-time for about 7 years now. I'm 28 years old, and now I've been doing it for a long time. I've sort of
Such an old dude.
I know, right?
Where do you come from?
I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan originally.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I moved, both my parents are from the Chicago area, so I moved here a little over 10 years ago. I went to Loyola Chicago in Rogers Park. So was a regular at the Heartland Cafe my first few years of living here.
Well, tell us about some of the Chicago bands that strike your fancy these days.
Oh, there's so many. Chicago, as we all know, is has one of the best arts communities in the entire world. I would
Amen.
argue.
Mark that tape.
Yeah, and there have been so many great bands. Obviously, we all know Twin Peaks, but there are a lot of great bands right now. Lala Lala is another one. Lala Lala, who also recently opened up for Twin Peaks on a East Coast tour, I want to say.
I saw them in Nashville. Well, I saw them in Nashville, and D.C., and New York.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Okay, Michael, show off later.
Driving around.
There's another band in Chicago who I think are just one of the best bands going right now. They're called Ohm. It's Seema Cunningham and Macy Stewart.
Don't we have them coming on?
They
soon?
are coming on, yeah. I'm not sure the date. I can probably find it, but
that's okay.
we'll let you all know.
They have great music, and they have great music coming out this year. It's not quite yet announced, but they are.
What's that great band with White in the title?
White Mystery.
Yeah, White Mystery, right.
They're the elder
That's-
statesmen of the Chicago rock community. They're fantastic people.
They're considered the elder statesmen.
Yeah, they are now.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, now that,
They're good folks.
they are excellent people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you yourself a musician?
Not anymore. I can play guitar and I can sing and play a little bit of piano, but I sort of figured a long time ago that if I can't be a musician, I might as well just write about them.
And do you dance at home?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Does the retirement of Greg Cott last week open up some avenues for you?
I don't know about that. I've already worked for the Tribune. I was the music critic for the Red Eye for 2 years.
Good for you.
Greg Cott is absolutely a legend, and
He truly is.
Without his writing, I don't think I would have ever even considered being a music journalist in the first place. Like reading his biography on Wilco, who were one of my favorite bands, was kind of life changing. Being a regular listener of Sound Opinions, the work he's put in this Chicago music community is you can't really measure it.
I
He's
couldn't
been
agree
such
more.
a important figure and so kind and just a great figure. Yeah.
So his colleague Jim DeRogatis broke the story about R. Kelly
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Right.
Why did this story take so
It's
long
incredible.
to actually get into the public consciousness? People talked about his antics for years, but seemingly scot-free.
Yeah,
It's not because journalists weren't trying to cover it.
right. I think about this a lot too. I think Jim's work on the R. Kelly story is not just the most important Chicago music journalism story probably ever. It might be one of the most important music journalism stories of the last 20 years. With any time you're looking for justice or you're looking for change, there's always going to be one very loud figure that is trying to get everyone to listen. And it's a shame that it took so long for people to listen to Jim.
I don't like to think about all the women who were hurt in those 20
Right.
years.
And I think, a lot of people just didn't really take the time to take in every single allegation.
Right.
Many people who were fans of R. Kelly, liked him for I Believe I Can Fly or Remix to Ignition. But they didn't they maybe knew one or two things, but they didn't take all the allegations as a whole horrifying block of evidence against one man.
Right.
I don't think people understood how bad it was and how much of a monster R. Kelly was, and that's probably why it took so long. Also, the cultural factors. Culture does move fast, but it also takes a long time. The way we talk about predators now is way different than it was 20 years ago.
Ain't that the
and
truth?
it took a lot of time for Chicago and the culture at large to catch up and be like, this isn't a person who should be making music anymore, and this isn't someone that we should be supporting.
What marks the Chicago music scene these days?
Well, I mean, it's the same story as always, I think. Chicago isn't New York or LA. It's still relatively cheap to live in, even though it's getting worse. But I think it's it's a perfect place for artists to feel comfortable, and it's still is. It's been this way for decades, but right now the Chicago music community is probably the most supportive and collaborative and carefree kind of music community that I've ever encountered in my.
You know what's cool is that people come on this show and say that about the film community, about the theater community in Chicago, and even about dance.
Yeah.
So I just want to
Well, I know that it's been true with the younger bands like Twin Peaks, Post Animal. These guys, they all support each other.
Yeah.
And, they're turning people out for each other's events. Tom, you were ready with the question.
Well, historically, Chicago's been framed as kind of the home of gospel, the home of a certain kind of jazz, of Maxwell Street blues, although it's certainly influenced by Memphis and other influences. But in these days, you could speak to how any of those genres are doing on their own. But what's Chicago become known for today? When you talk about the music scene, what kind of music is it that you're talking about? Is it just
a
rock?
lot, quite a lot. Chicago is nationally and internationally recognized for a lot of different movements and genres right now. You know, obviously the indie rock community is very much thriving. You have bands like Ohm, Twin Peaks, Whitney, La La La, Grape Tooth, all doing great work. You also have the Chicago hip hop community. Chance the Rapper is obviously the biggest story out of the last 10 years, and he's doing very well, and he's, you know, a great artist. But you also have smaller artists like Saba, Smino, No Name, Kwaku Collins. And then you have the jazz community, which is, there's a great label in Chicago called International Anthem, and out of young listeners and people who still listen to jazz in 2020, International Anthem is internationally recognized. It's a great label. There's a band on there called Reservoir. That's excellent.
So I just want to ask, as an oldie who grew up on LPs,
Yeah.
you know, even 45s, what is the main platform now? Is it video? Is it concerts versus is live? Stuff that's streamed on YouTube versus CDs or LPs. What's the platform?
Well, it depends on who you ask. You know, I think right now...
I'm asking you,
Yeah,
dude.
all right. Well, I still buy LPs. There are so many fantastic record stores
Yeah,
in Chicago.
more than ever now.
Well, they're
Yeah.
coming back. big
They
time.
have been.
There's new pressing
you know,
plants opening up.
like for my job, I consume music in a variety of ways. You know, I do use streaming. It's kind of unavoidable at a certain point, especially for like researching bands, and you might not own every LP, and it's much
Clearly.
easier to have it at the click of a button.
Right.
But you know, I still really appreciate physical media. I love holding an LP in my hand and playing it on my turntable. But going to shows is also the way I consume music. Like I'm going to 2 shows later today.
Thank God for 20 and 30-year-olds who go to shows.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you about the big festivals. We got Lollapalooza. Pitchfork just announced their lineup. Is this a good thing to have these great events? And what is your take on the lineup that is now coming out for Pitchfork?
So I'll start with, is it a good thing? It depends on what festival. Lollapalooza is a very convenient way for a lot of people to experience a lot of music in one weekend. Is it a good thing for local venues with the radius clauses? Maybe not, you know, and with all the money and how it's become sort of like a very corporate event. You know, Lollapalooza, it's fun, but I don't think long term, it's probably not great for an organic music community. Pitchfork, on the other hand, that's locally booked. It's not booked by the publication. It's booked by people in Chicago. It seems a little more manageable, and the way it's been with the neighborhood, Union Park likes having Pitchfork there. Same with like Riot Fest. It's, you know, these festivals are fun. You know, I'm not the one to speak on the long-term implications of having all this music in one place on one weekend, you know, and what that means for local businesses and local venues and an organic community. But I will say that like the Pitchfork lineup that you mentioned is quite good. You know, Pitchfork is one of the better festivals in terms of booking local artists. You know, Twin Peaks have a very high billing this year, but there are also like other acts like the Hex, who are one of my favorite bands. They're so fantastic. And then Divino Nino, who are a great band out of Chicago, are also gracing the lineup.
How do bands make money these days? Because I know that, how does it work for them? I mean, they always seem like the only way they're really making any money is by selling their merchandise. And now
Yeah.
it's a bigger thing. I mean, there used to be these DIY, do-it-yourself venues for this new, kind of young music rock scene. What's your take on that, and on how bands can make some dough?
I mean, you have to tour. Yeah, you know, the way it's sort of like journalism, or really any industry where it's becoming harder to make money, and you have to kind of get creative in how you can make a living when you're in a creative field. With bands, you know, it's sort of the same story. Like, obviously record sales, they're not making that much money from streaming, if at all. So they have to tour, they have to sell their merchandise, you know, and if the bands decide to do this, or if an artist decides to do this, they could have their song in a commercial, or I don't know, have it in a movie or a TV show. And those are ways that bands make money now. As far as DIY spaces go, you know, I went to a lot of DIY venues when I was younger in Chicago, and there are still several spaces throughout the city where bands play.
Them?
Yeah.
Can you name them?
Not on the radio. You know,
Okay.
this is sort of these are
Good,
sort of
good,
off
just checking.
these are off the books places that I wouldn't want to blow up their spot on WLUW.
So I was researching the playlist that you gave us. I noticed that a lot more videos are using animation. Is that a trend that you're seeing? Is that a way to break through out of the pack?
I don't know. I think I think bands have used animations in videos for a long time, and I think probably the simpler answer is that, you know, I'm trying to think of which music video it might be, but if it's one of the Chicago artists I listed, it's probably they just had their friends animate a video, and I think that's sort of the beauty of the Chicago music scene, is that people just work with their friends, and if you have like a friend who's a great animator, might as well have them do your music video.
So I used to listen to radio a lot as when I was into music as a younger person. What is the way that people take their music more radio-wise? Do people listen to Vocalo, WLUW? I mean, what are the...
As far
NUR.
Yeah, I think NPR is a really big one in terms they have like
NPR.
Yeah, they have
Oh.
a really good music section. Vocalo is obviously excellent. Jill at Vocalo does great work. I listen to her program a lot. You know, I have friends who work for WXRT, and in Chicago, they always take steps to highlight local artists. That's always really great. I think as far as like the way people my age consume music, it probably does fall into streaming services a little bit more, and it's kind of usually picked by an algorithm rather than like an actual person who's DJing the records, which, you know, it's convenient, but I still listen to the radio as much as I can.
Yeah.
What stories are you working on?
I'm working on quite a few things right now. Right on Monday, I'm interviewing a jazz drummer. His name is Jeremy Cunningham. He has his record release show tonight at Constellation. He plays in a jazz band called Reservoir, and Reservoir are on that label International Anthem I was telling you about. He's a phenomenal drummer. His record is fantastic. He has a lot of local Chicago musicians on it. It's sort of a concept record. His brother died in a home invasion over 12 years ago, and it's a very like affecting story about, you know, grief and loss and gun violence in Chicago. And it's from what I've heard, his record release is going to have video installations that sort of talk about Chicago gun violence, and I'm really excited to kind of dig deeper.
For people who don't know about Constellation, tell them about that.
It's this fantastic jazz and avant-garde club on Western, kind of right by.
Nolan Chin used to be our engineer here, and he's still working over there?
Yeah, Nolan is definitely still working over there. I saw him last weekend. Yeah, Nolan and I went to college together at Loyola.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, he was our intern for a while.
Great.
I think he's going to be playing at Chopin, too. Mm-hmm. He's got a bunch of gigs on his own music coming up.
Yeah, Alex Grelly's floor show at Chopin Theater, yeah.
Wow. Well, Josh Terry, you should come back and keep
love
us
to.
regularly updated on the Chicago music scene.
I already asked him.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
We're going to hear a little My Babe from Little Walter as we tune out here, and we want to thank Jennifer Murtaugh, Jacob Meister, and Josh Terry. Next week, we have Brendan Schiller, who is going to talk about judges, but I think based on his Facebook post, we'll be talking about a few other things as well. And Bucky Hawker is coming in to talk about his new CD project, doing Hokie Carmichael songs.
And we're working on
kids.
getting Kim Fox. So keep your fingers crossed, people.
She said she'd come on. Now we'll see. She comes.
Thanks to our music producer, Lynn Orman Weiss, and our engineer, James Porter, and our videographer, Andy. Stay tuned for the next show, which is Bob Mervitz on Doing Gospel Memories. Please,
Do good in
everyone,
the world.
do good in the world.
The world needs all the good that we do.
All power to the people.
Kissing, hugging my baby, true little baby, my baby.